Hi, this is Swan with Swan Amity Studios, and today we are looking at making a quick label for our shapeshifter project. And let's start by saying every quilt should have a label. Every quilt. Anything you make, you should have a label on your quilt so that someone knows who made it, when and where, and if it has a name. So when I start my labels, I always make sure that there is a title at the top. Now, in this case, this is the second shapeshifter quilt I've made, and so I very cleverly named this one Shapeshifter 2. You should always say who designed and created the quilt. Designed and created by Swan Amity Sheridan. You could also say quilted, so this could say designed, created, and quilted by Swan Amity Sheridan, and that would also be fine. In this case, I'm going to allow that to just be implied. Where it was made, Tucson, Arizona, and when it was completed, December of 2020. I also like to sign my labels, so this is my Swan signature. That's how I put my name on everything that I make. And I like to make sure everything is lined up nice and straight. But if I don't have some lines for indicators, I'm one of those people that slowly writes downhill. So when I'm setting up to make my labels, the first thing I start with is a piece of freezer paper. The shiny side of the freezer paper has been ironed down to the fabric, and as you can see, any shape will do, a square, a circle, or any other variety of shapes you might want to cut out from your freezer paper. I then get out my ruler and a nice pen and create lines. These are all 1/2 inch apart, with a larger space at the top for the title and a larger space at the bottom for my signature. I'm then going to iron that to the back of the fabric, and just like I would in any one of my applique tutorials, I'm going to have out my trolley needle, my paintbrush, liquid starch mixed with water, my little iron, and my Zig Rider pens, archival examples. I like the ones that have the little end at one end, and it makes a nice rounded line. And I like that it has a fat side as well, a thicker line. And you can see I usually use the thicker line at the top and the thinner line for all of the other details. You can also use the thinner one to outline anything that might not have been as distinct as you would like for it to be in the thicker side of the marker. The archival Zig Riders do a really nice job. Low acid or acid free. This one is acid free. And they keep really nice, what would you call it, clarity as your quilt is used over time. Once I have used all of my applique tools to turn over the seam allowance of my label, I know what size my label is going to be exactly now. I go ahead and move to my Lightbox. In this case, I'm a really big fan of Lightboxes from the Daylight Company because, as you can see, Lightbox off can kind of see those lines, but if this fabric were any darker, that would be difficult. But Lightbox on, I can see all of my lines very clearly. Even if this were a gray fabric, those lines would show up quite clearly with the Daylight Lightbox. Now this is one of the wafer light boxes. The wafer 1 is a nice small one, and the wafer 2 is a great one to have on your studio table. Big fan. You can see there's just no guesswork to be done there. You can see all of your lines very clearly. Now with Shapeshifter, you're going to have a lot of little leftover pieces remaining. So if you are wanting to make little additions to your labels, it's very easy to pull out some of the pieces that are left over from your piecing. Maybe even after your border is done, you won't have used all of your materials. One easy thing to do to make sure that all of the seam allowance is tucked in with a leftover piece like this is to cut yourself a piece of freezer paper the size that you would like the finished square to be. In this case, 2 inches by 2 inches. And then just like with your little applique pieces, get your freezer paper, starch, and iron your little trolley needle out. Turn over those edges. You can see that's what I've done here. Now these all look like little finished blocks ready to add to the project. All of these are going to end up on my shapeshifter too. Stitched down like a nice little piece of applique. Or if you don't applique, a nice thing to do is add this label to the back of your quilt with a little bit of stitching on your machine. A little satin stitch, a little buttonhole stitch around the edge. Just remove the freezer paper, pin into place, and stitch down. If you stitch your label in the center of your quilt and then quilt it, your label will be nice and flat on the project, and you won't have had to do any handwork at all. Those are ready to go. Now here's another example. The original shapeshifter is complete and ready to head off to Miro, Austin, McKinley in the LA greater area. And here is his label. In this case, the title of the quilt. Once again, designed and created by me. And in this case, it's a gift. So for Miro, Austin, McKinley, on the occasion of his birth, October 3rd of this year. My signature, and once again, where it was made. Now in this case, the fabric is the same background fabric I used throughout on the front of the quilt. And some of the yellow is out here in some cute little circles. Those circles were cut from freezer paper and done just the way that they are in my circle applique tutorial. And then the fabric, you notice, I've added some little yellow distinctions. And those were just done with another yellow zig rider, drawing on the fabric, embellishing portions of the fabric to make them stand out so that they pair up with the little yellow circles at the edge. I thought that would be just a little fun detail. Now that means, of course, that you can play around with any fun details you might want to do as you add a label to another project. You might figure out how to position some of your pieces around your other shapes. You might want them to be overlapping on the rest of your label. You can be as playful or as distinctive or as plain as you choose with your label making. These are just some simple ideas for making your own label for Shapeshifter. Keep in mind, using good archival pens to write on your labels is the best choice. Making sure that you use lines to keep all the information on your label straight and clear, and making sure to provide the appropriate information: title, design and creation information, location, and time in which the quilt was completed. Always sign your labels. That signature is very important. It's your little artist stamp on your piece of art. Thank you for joining me for a little label making for Shapeshifter. I hope you will keep following us here on the YouTube channel. Make sure you like the video and subscribe to the channel. And then check us out on swanamity.com. That's SWANAMITY.com. Come and find out what other fun projects we have going on for you.